It was supposed to be an ordinary winter night in Silver Ridge when veteran Jack Carter returned home unexpectedly and opened his little girl's bedroom door. Inside, he froze. Emily, his daughter with the metal leg, sat trembling on a wooden chair, clutching a tiny puppy against her chest, while the woman he trusted stood over her, shouting in rage. The woman's hand rose high, ready to strike. But before harm could fall, Jack and Rex burst through the doorway. His command sharp, the dogs growled deep and fierce, stopping the moment in its tracks. The room fell silent, except for the sound of the child's sobs. That night, under the heavy snow, a father's love stood between innocence and cruelty. If you believe no child should ever face fear alone, stay with us till the end of this story. May your day be filled with compassion, strength, and peace. The snow came down thick that night over Silver Ridge, the kind that buried sound and light alike, turning the whole valley into a world of white breath and silence. The road shimmered faintly beneath the truck's headlights as Jack Carter guided it through the storm, the tires groaning over frozen gravel. He was a tall man with quiet shoulders and eyes that had seen both duty and loss. His dark hair brushed with silver near the temples, a trace of frost clinging to his olive-green field jacket. Beside him sat Rex, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a black saddle of fur and a gaze sharp enough to read the dark. The old dog's breath fogged the window as he watched the small wooden house that waited ahead. Their house. Jack slowed as he turned into the drive, a faint smile touching his lips. 3 months away at the K-9 Rescue Training Center had felt longer than it should. The thought of seeing Emily again, her laughter filling the halls, had carried him through the long nights. But before he could turn off the engine, Rex stiffened. The dog's ears pricked, his chest expanding as a deep warning growl rolled from within him. Jack looked up, following Rex's stare toward the upstairs window. The light behind the curtain flickered once. Then, a shadow moved, fast, jagged. Rex barked, short and sharp, cutting through the howl of the storm. Jack's heart tightened. He stepped out into the cold, boots sinking into the snow. The air was sharp, biting, alive. Rex followed close behind, his paws sinking with soft, deliberate thuds. The porch light flickered weakly, casting their shadows against the wall. Jack's hand touched the doorknob. It turned easily, unlocked. That was wrong. The door creaked open to a rush of warm air, heavy with the scent of lavender and something else. Tension, stale and sour. Then, through that uneasy stillness came a faint broken sound. A sob. Jack moved down the narrow hallway, each step slow, controlled, the kind of movement a man makes when every sense is telling him danger lives ahead. The sound grew clearer, quiet crying, a child's voice swallowed by fear. He reached the end of the hall and pushed open the door. What he saw made him freeze where he stood. Emily, his 6-year-old daughter, was crouched on the floor beside her bed, small shoulders shaking. Her bright blonde hair fell messily over her face, sticking to wet cheeks streaked with tears. She wore a long-sleeved beige dress dotted with tiny white polka dots, the fabric soft but wrinkled from her trembling hands. Her metallic prosthetic leg caught the light from the lamp, glinting faintly against the wooden floor. In her arms, she held a tiny German shepherd puppy, barely a month old, its fur wet, its body pressed tightly against her chest as if it could hide from the shouting that filled the air. Across from her stood Veronica Hale, Jack's girlfriend, a tall woman in her early 30s, her straight dark brown hair falling loosely over a fitted gray sweater and black jeans. Her face, beautiful in stillness, was twisted now with fury. Her voice cracked through the air like glass. "I told you, no filthy animals in this house!" She gripped Emily's silver crutch in both hands, her knuckles white, the metal trembling above her shoulder as she pointed it straight at the child. "You never listen, Emily. You never do what I say." The puppy whimpered. Emily flinched, her tears falling faster. "He was cold," the little girl sobbed. "I just wanted to help him." Veronica's voice rose, sharp with anger. "You don't get to make decisions in this house. I said no." She took a step forward, raising the crutch higher. For one suspended second, the world held its breath. Then, a deep, thunderous growl ripped through the air. Rex launched forward, a flash of tan and black muscle. The crutch flew from Veronica's hands, clattering to the floor. She stumbled backward with a gasp, her face draining of color. Jack burst into the room just behind him, moving without thought. He dropped to his knees, pulling Emily into his arms, her small body trembling against his chest. The puppy squeaked between them, a faint heartbeat against the cold of his jacket. Rex planted himself between Jack and Veronica, his ears sharp, his teeth barely bared. A low, rumbling warning filled the room. Not rage, but protection made sound. For a long moment, no one spoke. The storm outside howled against the windows, the lamp flickered, and the house seemed to shrink under the weight of its own silence. Veronica was the first to find her voice. "Jack," she said, her tone shaking. "You don't understand. I wasn't going to hurt her. I was just teaching her a lesson. She has to learn. You're too soft on her." Jack looked up at her, his voice low, steady, dangerous in its calm. "Teaching her," he repeated. "Is that what this looks like to you?" Veronica's lips trembled. "You weren't here, Jack," she shot back, defensiveness creeping into her tone. "You left for months. She doesn't listen to me. She disobeys. I can't handle it." But he wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had already turned back to Emily, to her shaking shoulders and small hands clutching the puppy's fur like it was the only safe thing in the room. "It's okay," he whispered, brushing the back of her hair gently. "You did nothing wrong." Her voice came out in gasps. "He was so cold, Daddy. I didn't mean to make her mad." Jack swallowed hard. "You have a good heart," he said softly. "Don't ever be sorry for that." Rex turned his head slightly, as if understanding, and nudged his muzzle gently against Emily's leg. The girl sniffled, reaching to touch his fur with trembling fingers. Jack stood slowly, his decision already made. His voice when it came was calm, quiet, final. "Get your coat, sweetheart," he said. Emily blinked, still afraid to move. "Now," he added, his tone softening. She nodded, still holding the puppy, and limped toward the chair where her navy blue scarf hung. Rex followed her with steady steps, his amber eyes never leaving Veronica. Veronica's voice cracked as she tried again. "Jack, you can't walk out like this. It's freezing outside. You'll kill her, dragging her into a storm." He turned toward her, his eyes cold but steady. "The storm outside won't hurt her," he said quietly. "It's the one inside this house that will." She froze where she stood, her mouth half open, her face pale against the glow of the lamp. Jack opened the front door. The wind howled through, snow rushing into the hallway in wild swirls. Emily clung to him as he lifted her into his arms. The puppy nestled between them, its tiny body quivering. Rex followed close behind, his fur dusted with snow before they even reached the steps. Behind them, the house glowed dimly through the storm, a warm light that no longer meant home. Jack placed Emily in the passenger seat, tucking the old army blanket around her. Rex jumped into the back, curling near her feet. The puppy whimpered once, then fell quiet. Jack looked once more at the house before him, the window still lit, the curtains still moving in the wind, then turned away. "No one will ever hurt you again," he murmured, his breath misting against the cold glass. The truck rolled forward, its tires carving deep paths into the snow until the house vanished behind them. And under that vast white silence, 3 souls, a father, a child, and a dog, began a journey that none of them yet knew would heal them all. The snow had not stopped when Jack's truck finally climbed the last hill toward the cabin. Dawn was only a pale breath above the trees, a thin silver light spreading over the white ridges of Silver Ridge Valley. The small wooden cabin, long unused, sat half buried under the snowdrift, its chimney dark, its windows dim. Jack pushed the door open, and a wave of cold air greeted them, sharp, still, untouched by fire for months. He carried Emily inside, wrapped tight in his coat, while Rex brushed past, circling the room once, nose low, scanning as if claiming the space. The puppy whimpered softly from Emily's arms, its tiny chest trembling with the same exhaustion that lay heavy in the air. He set Emily down gently on the couch near the cold hearth. Her bright hair had fallen into her face, cheeks pale against the scarf that still clung around her neck. She didn't speak. She hadn't since the house, not one word. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in the empty room, the old clock that had stopped years ago, the shelf of dusted jars. Rex padded close, settling by her feet. Jack knelt to start a fire, his hands shaking not from the cold, but from something deeper, the kind of anger that hides inside a father's silence. When the first spark caught, it threw a faint glow across the walls, a whisper of warmth finally pushing back the cold. By afternoon, the snow outside was falling slower, the storm exhausted, leaving only a quiet mist over the pine line. Emily sat near the window wrapped in a blanket, her small fingers tracing circles on the fogged glass. The puppy lay in her lap, asleep, its soft breaths syncing with hers. A notebook sat open on the table beside her. She had begun to draw, not words, not people, just shapes. Jack leaned closer and saw what filled the page. Rex, standing tall beside a tiny dog with a crooked tail. There was no color, only black pencil, heavy lines pressed deep as if she was trying to carve them into permanence. Days passed that way. Emily spoke little, ate little, and drew endlessly. Jack tried to talk, to make her laugh, but every word seemed to echo in a place she could no longer reach. She didn't fear her father. She feared the mirror in herself. He saw it one morning when she sat on the porch, staring at her prosthetic leg with distant eyes. She brushed her small fingers along the cold metal, as if it didn't belong to her. Jack crouched beside her, unsure what to say. "Does it hurt today?" he asked softly. Emily shook her head. "Not outside," she whispered. It was the first thing she had said in 4 days. Then she turned her face away, ashamed of even that small confession. That night, when Emily had fallen asleep, a knock came at the door. Rex rose immediately, head high, a low rumble in his chest. Jack opened the door to find Clara Johnson, standing in the snow with a lantern in one hand and a basket in the other. She was in her early 60s, a sturdy woman with short gray curls and kind, weathered eyes that had seen both war and birth in her years as a nurse. Her coat was thick, and her breath came in slow, white clouds. "You look like someone who could use a hot meal," she said simply. Her tone carried that gentle firmness that made resistance impossible. Inside, Clara set down the basket, soup, bread, bandages, and 2 small tins of cocoa powder. She moved around the cabin with the practiced grace of someone used to tending wounds you can't see. "I used to come up here when your mother was alive," she said quietly, her gaze drifting to the old photograph still hanging crooked on the wall. "This place remembers kindness, Jack. You should let it remember hers, too." When she turned to Emily, her face softened even more. "You must be the little artist I've heard about," she said with a smile. Emily didn't answer, but her eyes flicked up briefly, curious despite herself. Over the next few days, Clara visited often, always bringing something small: soup, books, a story told softly by the fire. She had a way of speaking that made even silence feel safe. One evening, as the wind howled outside, Jack finally spoke what had been pressing in his chest. "She doesn't talk much," he said. "Not to me. I don't know how to reach her." Clara didn't look up from stirring the soup. "You can't rush healing," she said. "You don't fix it like a wound. You wait beside it." Then she looked at him, her eyes deep and steady. "Sometimes healing doesn't need medicine, just someone who stays long enough." The words struck him harder than she knew. Later that night, after Clara left, Jack sat by the fire while Rex lay stretched near the hearth, his golden eyes half open, keeping quiet watch. Emily was asleep, one hand resting on the puppy's small back, the other holding a pencil, as if she might draw again, even in her dreams. The flicker of the flames painted the room in amber light. For the first time in weeks, Jack felt something ease inside him, not hope yet, but the faint outline of it. The next morning, the sun broke through for the first time since the storm. Light poured through the frost-covered window, touching everything in gold. Emily woke slowly, blinking against it. She sat up and found Rex lying beside her, head resting near her prosthetic leg. The puppy was tucked in her arms, warm and safe. For a long time, she just watched them, her hand moving through Rex's fur with gentle, absent strokes. The rhythm of his breathing steadied hers, and when Jack looked over from the stove, he saw her smile, small, fleeting, but real. It was the first one he'd seen since that night. While Emily and the dog slept, Jack's phone buzzed faintly on the table. He hadn't looked at it since leaving the house. When he unlocked it, the screen blinked to life, a flood of old messages appearing at once. Most were harmless: logistics, reminders, weather alerts. But one caught his eye, a number he didn't recognize. The message read, "You think walking away fixes it? She owes us, and you know what happens to people who forget their debts." His blood ran cold. He opened another message, older this time, the same number, same tone. "Keep her quiet. We don't want attention. She's good at pretending, but not for long." Jack stared at the screen, his reflection pale in the glass. Outside, the wind had picked up again, stirring the snow across the pines. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching, sensing his unease. Jack looked toward Emily, still sleeping peacefully on the couch, her small hand resting against the puppy's fur. He turned off the phone and set it down slowly, his jaw tightening. Whatever this was, whoever it went far beyond anger in a kitchen. The storm inside his home had only been a beginning. The snow had begun to melt by the time Jack decided to act. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind carried a different kind of weight, one that pressed on his chest each time he looked at his sleeping daughter. Days had turned into a blur of routine. Waking early, checking the locks, walking Rex along the ridge, yet something in him refused rest. The messages on Veronica's phone haunted his thoughts, the words circling in his mind like a whisper he couldn't silence. Whoever sent them knew more, and he needed to know why. The world outside might have thawed, but inside Jack, winter still reigned. That morning, he left Emily with Clara and drove into town. Silver Ridge was quiet under its thin veil of frost. The sheriff's office stood at the corner of Maple and Ridgeway, a squat brick building with faded blue shutters and an old flag that barely stirred in the breeze. Inside, the heater hummed, filling the air with dry warmth and the smell of coffee. Behind the front desk sat Sarah Monroe, a 29-year-old police officer with sharp gray eyes and an even sharper sense of right and wrong. Her blonde hair was tied back in a low ponytail beneath her navy blue uniform cap, and her badge gleamed under the fluorescent light. When she looked up and saw Jack, her expression softened. "Sergeant Carter," she greeted, her voice low but firm. "Didn't think I'd see you in uniform territory again." Jack managed a small smile. "Not in uniform anymore," he said. "Just a father trying to make sense of something." He placed his phone on her desk, the messages already open. She read in silence, her brow tightening. "This isn't random," she said finally. "These sound like instructions, or threats." Her gaze flicked up to him. "You think Veronica's involved with something bigger?" Jack hesitated, then nodded. "I don't think... I know." Sarah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the desk. "Veronica Hale," she murmured, repeating the name like she was testing it against memory. "Give me a day. I'll run a check, quietly." She glanced toward the back office where the sheriff's door was closed. "You don't want this going through the usual channels yet. Too many ears." Jack nodded. She added, "You were military. You know how shadows work. They move before they're seen." He left her with the phone and a quiet thank you, the kind that carried more weight than words. That night, as Jack sat by the fire, the old cabin felt smaller. Emily slept soundly with the puppy curled against her, Rex sprawled at the foot of her bed. The crackle of the fire was the only sound. He stared into the flames, his hands rough and still. Memories of Veronica's smile twisted in his mind, how easily kindness could hide something rotten beneath. His thoughts broke when Rex stirred, lifting his head, ears perked. A sound outside, faint, deliberate. Jack rose quietly, peered. Through the frosted window, nothing but trees and moonlight. Yet the dog didn't relax. Something was out there, watching. The next afternoon, Sarah returned his call. Her voice was low, urgent. "Jack, you were right. Veronica's record isn't clean. There's something from 2 years ago, sealed court documents from Helena County. She was a witness in a case involving a so-called children's charity, something about international adoptions. But the case never went public. It was dropped." She paused. "The group's name was Bright Path Foundation. Sounds innocent, but it's come up in a few other investigations. Trafficking disguised as adoption aid." Jack's knuckles whitened around the phone. "And Veronica?" he asked. Sarah's reply came like a slow breath. "She wasn't a witness, Jack. She was a recruiter." The words settled like lead. Jack stared at the snow outside, each flake melting on the glass like time slipping away. "There's more," Sarah added. "I found transactions tied to her name, small amounts, recurring, linked to foreign accounts, and the strangest thing, the last payment was labeled E72. Might be a code or a name." Jack didn't need to guess what the letter stood for. He could feel the blood drain from his face. Sarah's tone softened. "We'll find out what it means, but Jack, be careful. If she was part of that ring, someone will come looking for what she left behind." That night, he searched the cabin for anything Veronica might have hidden. Rex followed him from room to room, silent but alert. The truck outside was still coated with frost. He opened the back door, the old leather seats creaking under his weight, and began checking the compartments. Rex sniffed along the edges, tail stiff, his nose working fast. Then the dog stopped, a short, sharp bark. He pawed at the lining of the rear panel. Jack peeled it back and found a small USB drive taped behind the seat frame, wrapped in electrical tape. His pulse quickened. He slipped it into his pocket and exhaled, his breath clouding the cold air. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice rough. Inside, he plugged the USB into his old laptop. The screen flickered, loading a list of files, names, dates, photographs, dozens of them. Some marked processed, others pending, and one folder labeled special class. His hand hovered over it. When he opened it, he saw images of children, all between 5 and 10, most with disabilities, missing limbs, scars, each labeled with a number. The final file name, E72. Emily's birthday matched the timestamp. His vision blurred. He shut the laptop, his breath ragged. Before he could speak, a sudden noise cracked the night, the shatter of glass, the rush of wind. Then the smell hit him. Gasoline. Jack turned toward the window. A dark figure moved through the snow outside, and a split second later, a bottle streaked with fire slammed through the glass. The explosion tore through the room in a flash of orange light. Rex barked, the sound sharp and commanding. Jack grabbed Emily, still half asleep, clutching the puppy. "Rex, out!" he shouted. The dog led the way, crashing through the back door as the flames roared behind them. The night outside was chaos, the cabin lit like a torch, snow hissing where the fire met it. Jack stumbled into the cold, holding Emily close as Rex circled them, barking toward the trees where the shadow had vanished. Sparks rained through the wind, glowing like dying stars. Emily's small voice broke through the crackle of fire. "Daddy, our home." Jack pressed his face into her hair, whispering, "We'll build another one, but we don't go back." They stood there, the flames reflecting in Rex's amber eyes, the puppy shivering in Emily's arms, the world around them swallowed by light and smoke. Jack knew now, this wasn't just revenge or anger. This was a warning. Someone out there didn't want the truth to surface. But as the fire ate away at the cabin, Jack felt something else rising in its place, a resolve as steady and cold as the snow beneath his boots. The flames of the burned cabin had barely died when the hunt began. What once was shelter had turned to ash, and from those ashes rose a quiet, relentless determination. Jack had not slept in 2 days, and neither had Rex, whose bandaged paw thudded softly against the ground with each step. The discovery of the USB had set everything in motion. Calls to Sarah, long meetings with state officers, and a plan that could no longer wait. The faces of those children in the files haunted him, especially the one marked E72. This was no longer about his family alone. It was about every child who had been sold under the name of charity. Dawn broke weakly over the frozen hills of Montana, painting the world in muted gold and gray. Jack stood by his truck outside Clara's home, his breath turning to mist. Emily clung to his sleeve, her small hand trembling as she looked up at him. She wore her long beige polka-dot dress and her navy scarf, her silver crutches resting against the porch rail. The puppy was in her arms, tiny and warm, its ears drooping sleepily. "You're going away again," she whispered. Jack knelt so his eyes met hers. "Only for a while," he said. "I'll come back when the sky's brighter." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You have my promise, sweetheart." Behind them, Clara watched quietly from the doorway, her eyes gentle but heavy with understanding. Emily buried her face into his jacket, the puppy squeaking softly between them. "Be brave for me," Jack murmured, "and for Rex." The dog stood beside them, silent but alert, his amber eyes fixed on Emily as if memorizing her face. When Jack turned to leave, Rex hesitated, then pressed his head gently against her leg before trotting after him. Clara's voice broke the stillness. "Bring him back, Jack, both of you." Jack nodded once without looking back, the crunch of snow under his boots fading into the wind. By nightfall, the operation was in motion. The state police had traced the warehouse, an abandoned freight depot on the outskirts of Bitter Creek, disguised as a logistics company. Floodlights glimmered faintly in the distance, cutting through the fog that rolled off the riverbank. Jack stood beside Sarah Monroe, now in tactical gear, her blonde hair tucked under a dark helmet, her gray eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. "They're moving kids out at dawn," she said quietly, checking her weapon. "We can't wait." Jack adjusted his vest and gave a short nod. "Then we finish it tonight." Rex waited near the vehicles, muscles tensed, ears pricked, a shadow of focus and instinct. The command came through the radio. "Team Alpha, move!" Snow crunched beneath their boots as the squad fanned out across the perimeter. The warehouse loomed ahead, its steel walls streaked with rust, faint light leaking from inside. Jack and Rex took the lead at the northern entrance, the cold air slicing through the darkness. He could hear muffled voices within, men laughing, a door slamming. His hand brushed Rex's back, a silent signal. The dog pressed forward, body low, every sense alive. The door gave way with a slow groan, and the world inside exploded into motion. "Police, drop your weapons!" Sarah's voice rang out as flashlights cut through the gloom. Chaos answered, shouts, movement, the clatter of crates. Jack rushed forward, Rex darting ahead, weaving between the confusion. A gunshot cracked, echoing through the rafters. Jack dove behind a crate, returning fire toward the shadows. "Left side," Sarah shouted. Jack moved with the precision of training that never really left him, his breath steady, his heart iron. Amid the noise, Rex froze, nose lifted, catching something the human ear couldn't. A sound, faint and frightened, coming from beneath the floor. Rex bolted toward a narrow door at the back, barking once, sharp, urgent. Jack followed, breaking the lock with his shoulder. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Two small children huddled near a crate, eyes wide, wrists bound. "It's okay," Jack said, kneeling, cutting the ties. But before they could move, another shot rang out, close. Rex lunged, the bullet grazing his shoulder as he shielded the children. The dog yelped but didn't fall. He pushed the kids toward Jack, tail low but wagging once, defiant even through pain. "Go!" Jack ordered, pulling Rex close and dragging him toward the exit. Outside, the fight was already ending. Sirens blared through the night as officers secured the scene, the traffickers pinned to the ground, handcuffs glinting under floodlights. Sarah approached, her face streaked with soot, a bruise blooming along her jaw. "It's over," she breathed. Jack looked at her, then at Rex lying in the snow, his chest rising shallowly. "Not yet," he said softly, pressing his hands against the bleeding shoulder. "Not until he's safe." They rushed him to the veterinary unit at the county hospital. The hall smelled of antiseptic and smoke. Jack sat beside the metal table, his palms stained with Rex's blood. The dog's breathing was ragged but steady, his gaze flicking toward Jack with quiet recognition. "You did it, partner," Jack whispered. "You found them." He leaned closer, his voice trembling. "You've done what men in uniform sometimes forget. You ran toward the danger, not away from it." His hand rested gently on Rex's head, fingers brushing the coarse fur. "You've done enough, boy. Rest now." Sarah stood in the doorway, her voice low. "The kids are safe. 2 of them had IDs from the missing persons list. You and Rex saved them, Jack." He nodded without looking up, his eyes still on his dog. The sound of distant sirens faded into the hum of the hospital lights. In that moment, surrounded by silence and the faint smell of smoke and snow, Jack understood that heroes weren't born on battlefields. They were made. In the quiet moments when no one was watching, when love refused to retreat. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Snow drifted past the hospital windows, soft and white again, as if the night had never burned. Jack rose slowly, exhaustion carved into his face, and looked once more at Rex. "We're going home soon," he said quietly. "Emily's waiting." The words carried both a promise and a prayer. The morning came quietly to Silver Ridge, soft and slow, as if the world itself needed time to breathe. The snow that had blanketed the town for weeks now drifted gently through the air, no longer cruel, no longer heavy. At the hospital, sunlight broke through thin clouds and spilled across the white floors of the corridor where Jack sat, still in his worn olive jacket, hands folded loosely before him. Outside, a radio from the nurses' station carried the news. Authorities confirm the dismantling of a large child trafficking network spanning 3 counties. Several officials, including Mayor Holt of Silver Ridge, are in custody. The words hung in the air like an ending long overdue. Jack exhaled, slow and deep, his breath visible against the window pane. For the first time in months, the world seemed to tilt toward light. Veronica's name came next, confessed, detained, cooperating. A name that once lived in his home now lived behind steel bars. Justice, he thought, was a strange kind of mercy. It never healed what was broken, but it stopped the bleeding. Down the hall, a nurse wheeled Rex from surgery, his fur shaved along the shoulder, his amber eyes drowsy but aware. The dog's tail thumped once against the blanket when he saw Jack. "You did it, partner," Jack murmured, crouching beside him. "You kept your promise." Then, as he looked toward the window, where snowflakes danced in the pale light, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Now it's my turn to keep mine. To Emily." By noon, the hospital discharged him. Jack stepped outside, the cold air biting but clean, each breath a small rebirth. The street was quiet except for the slow hum of plows clearing what was left of the storm. He looked up at the pale sky, its color like porcelain, and smiled faintly. "Rex," he said softly, the words fogging into the air, "you've done your part. Now we go home." Behind him, Sarah Monroe approached, bundled in her dark police coat, fatigue written around her eyes. "They'll be talking about this one for years," she said, her tone gentle. Jack shook his head. "Let them talk about the kids instead," he replied. "They're the ones who deserve to be remembered." 6 months later, the world looked different. The snow had melted into the earth, and grass now swayed where ashes once lay. At the cabin rebuilt near the Pine Ridge, laughter returned, bright, unbroken. Emily had grown taller, her blonde hair brushing her shoulders, her step steady on a new metallic prosthetic leg painted with tiny stars. She no longer feared her reflection. Each morning she practiced walking in the yard while Rex trotted beside her, his once injured shoulder fully healed, his fur glinting golden in the sun. The little puppy, now nearly grown, bounded through the grass in wild circles, earning the name Emily had given him, Little One. Jack watched from the porch, his coffee steaming in the cool air. Clara Johnson visited, often bringing baskets of wildflowers and jars of honey, her gray curls tucked under a wide-brimmed hat. Beside her, Sarah Monroe had traded her tactical uniform for a denim jacket and calm purpose. Together, they had opened a small center in town called Silver Hearts, a safe place for children who had survived violence and needed to remember that kindness still existed. "You gave it the right name," Jack told them one afternoon. Sarah smiled faintly. "You gave us the reason," she replied. Inside the cabin, the walls no longer smelled of smoke but of paint and cinnamon tea. Emily spent hours at the old wooden table, her pencils scattered everywhere. One evening she approached Jack with a folded paper in her hands, her blue eyes bright with pride. "It's for you," she said. Jack unfolded it carefully. The drawing showed a small house under falling snow, their house, with 4 figures standing together, a man in a green jacket, a little girl with one silver leg, and 2 dogs, one large and one small. Above them, she had written in neat childlike letters, "Home in the Snow." Jack's throat tightened as he ran his thumb over the faint lines. "It's perfect," he whispered. Emily grinned. "It's us," she said simply. As spring deepened, the days grew longer, and peace began to settle into the rhythm of their lives. Jack spent mornings teaching Emily how to tie the straps of her crutches by herself. "You loop it here," he'd say, guiding her small fingers. "Then pull tight, not too hard." She laughed each time she got it right, her joy filling the cabin like birdsong. "You see," he'd tell her, "you don't need my hands forever." And she'd reply with a mischievous smile, "Maybe not, but I'll still borrow your jacket." Some evenings when the sun dipped behind the pines, Jack would sit by the porch with Rex lying beside his boots and little one asleep in Emily's lap. The horizon turned gold, then rose, then soft blue. He would think of the nights filled with sirens, of fire and fear, of the faces they saved and the ones they couldn't. But more than anything, he would think of what had survived, the unspoken courage between a father, a daughter, and a dog who refused to break. It was not heroism in the way people like to name it. It was endurance. It was love choosing to stay. The town changed too. The police department worked closely with Silver Hearts, and every rescued child found a guardian who cared. Mayor Holt's arrest brought reform, and for the first time in years, the people of Silver Ridge believed that goodness could outlast greed. Sarah became known not for the raid but for her compassion. Clara's kindness became a story mothers told their children on long winter nights. And when locals passed by Jack's cabin, they'd often see a girl with bright blonde hair and a silver leg running through the field with 2 dogs chasing her shadow, a sight that made even the coldest hearts soften. One late afternoon, Emily called from the yard. "Dad, come see this." Jack stepped out, wiping paint from his hands. She stood by the fence, pointing to the horizon where the sun broke through a thin veil of clouds. "It looks like the sky's smiling," she said. Jack chuckled. "Maybe it is," he replied. Rex pressed his head against Jack's knee, as if agreeing. "You know," Jack said, watching the sky turn soft pink, "I used to think peace was something you found. But it's not. It's something you build, one promise at a time." As dusk settled, the cabin lights glowed warm against the gathering blue. Inside, Emily curled on the couch between Rex and little one, the room filled with the gentle hum of life continuing, fragile, ordinary, and beautiful. Jack looked at them, the corners of his eyes crinkling, a quiet smile forming beneath the wear of years. For the first time since the snow began to fall that fateful night, he felt whole. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and the faint echo of laughter, proof that even after the darkest winter, the heart always remembers how to find its way home. In the end, this story is not only about Jack, Emily, or Rex. It is about every quiet soul who chooses kindness when no one is watching, about the small acts of courage that never make the news but still change the world. Sometimes heroism is not in saving thousands, but in saving one heart from breaking. If this story touched something inside you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words may bring light to someone else's night. And if you believe that compassion still has the power to heal what the world has broken, subscribe and stay with us for more stories of faith, love, and second chances. May God bless you and everyone who carries kindness in their heart.